אמש נחתם בסינמטק תל אביב פסטיבל סולידריות עם הקרנת הסרט הדוקומנטרי האחר, אשר מתמקד בפעילי שלום יהודים ופלסטינים ומתמקד בחוסר ההיכרות בין שני הצדדים על רקע המלחמות והטראומות שמובילות לפחד ושנאה. בעוד שרוב הסרט צולם לפני ה-7 באוקטובר, חלקו האחרון שצולם לאחר השבת השחורה מתמקד דווקא באופטימיות של הדוברים והדוברות לקראת עתיד טוב יותר, ודווקא עכשיו, כדי לדבר על הסרט ולשמוע עוד עליו, איתנו באולפן בימאית הסרט ג'וי סלע. Hi Joy, thanks for joining me.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So let's talk about The Other, your film. There's much to discuss, but maybe we should go back to the beginning and maybe tell me about your decision to even delve so deeply into the specific topic, into the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Sure. Obviously not something you take lightly, not an easy endeavor. I grew up in an Israeli-American Jewish home in the Midwest, and I was very familiar with the Israeli and Jewish narrative and history and everything related to that. And I grew up coming to Israel throughout my life and felt very connected. But I knew nothing about the Palestinian narrative and their space on our shared homeland or anything like that until I started making this film. And what I found was through the experience of getting to know them, I came into a deeper connection with understanding myself, and that's what I hope that this film conveys for people.
That's really interesting. You're saying you only knew your side, the Jewish side, the Israeli side, and only by working on this film, you uncovered the other, as you mentioned and as you're described. But how did it happen? Like, what was the first moment that you realized, wow, this is a lot of stuff that I just don't know?
Right. So I started by just working within Israel and doing something much lighter that's just covering, not really getting to the meat of the issue. And I thought that I would just get a little more footage that summer. That was in 2018. I had filmed for about a month in 2017. And I was taken to a demonstration actually at al-Ahmar in the West Bank. And that was in the fall of 2018 in September. And that from there is when it really began and everything started to open up. And I realized that my entire belief system was being challenged in a way, and I was going on a journey to really that had just started from that moment.
And I wonder what kind of comments did you get from your surrounding environment? Like maybe your family, was it challenging for people?
Well, I actually kept, as what's interesting is that maybe in the West, what we see, and I'm sure here as well, that sometimes when you see people working together, you know, with obviously acknowledging a power imbalance, but just pain and trauma on both sides and being within a conflict, when you see both sides and you care about the pain of both, it's sometimes seen as something that's lighter or softer or not as serious and not really understanding the issue. But what I've come to find is that it's actually far more difficult to hold that middle space because it's very alienating from your own community. So I found it to be a quite individual process that I did mostly alone while I lived here. I was kind of in this bubble where I was living in Tel Aviv, but I was spending most of my time filming in the West Bank. And I didn't really share much with my loved ones until I was able to kind of digest everything I was working on. And it's a space that is, it's difficult, and that's something that a lot of the subjects in the film discuss as well.
Right, you're talking about, you said a lot of interesting things that I would love to expand on, but I'll start with talking about pain. And you say once you realize pain on both sides, it kind of opens up new things for you and new perspectives for you. And with the film, I felt like you decided to kind of open up with a lot of tragedy and loss, and basically by people sharing their terrible stories of family members dying and getting killed or murdered. And tell me a little bit about that decision to specifically start from that place of such great pain.
I love that question. No one has asked me that yet, and that was an actual very deliberate choice. So when we were putting this together, we wanted to establish the normal, and what makes this place so tragically unique is that that is the normal. So I wanted to make a film that ended on hope and showed the humanity and all these things, but I knew we would not be taken seriously unless we touched on the actual reality, the trauma, the wounds, the suffering, the oppression, the violence, everything. So we knew we needed to do that. And it only made sense to start because a lot of the subjects in the film, that's where their journey of transformation and seeing the other actually began, is through suffering great loss or from beginning in violence and then going to nonviolence. So it only made sense that that's actually the beginning point. So.
Right. They start from the pain, and then you also showed how a lot of them actually move towards places of sharing their pain with the other and learning more about the pain on the other side. You also made a decision to base the film around the people and the places, I felt, more so than, you know, terrible footage or like historical stuff, more so just people talking and sharing their story.
Yes. I felt for me in my experience, so really, I'm a first-time filmmaker. This is my first project, and I essentially just had a camera with me documenting, but I was going through my own learning experience, and I think that comes through in the film, that I was on this journey with these subjects. So basically, I felt that for me, opening up to understand, to learn, to acknowledge another narrative, to hold more understanding and awareness for everyone, and for things that also would contradict my own narrative and could potentially feel threatening in the beginning. If I were able to hold that, my first step was humanizing the other side and understanding, like getting to know them and their story. So I noticed that was a lot of the first step for my subject, and that separation is a huge theme in the film, and that when you're separated and you're not able to understand or learn or be even aware of these people and humanize them, I mean, to me, that's a very necessary first step to be caring and getting into action and solidarity. You need first to become aware and then to see them. Absolutely. Yeah. So I felt that it's harder to argue or want to root down into your belief system when you're looking at someone sharing their pain and what they really went through. I mean, I think also in the West, it's a huge problem that everyone is speaking for these people. They need to be able to speak for themselves and share their story. So that was very important to me.
Right. I mean, once you mentioned that, let's dive into that a little bit about what kind of interaction do you have with people outside of this region around the film? What are the main things that you hear from people at a time where a lot of people are busy talking about what's going on here, but they're not often very educated, to put it lightly?
Right, or they're very polarized to one side. And well, I was very worried about releasing the film after October 7th for many reasons, and the way in which this topic is dealt with outside of Israel-Palestine is very different. And I will have to say that I was positively surprised at the very warm reception we received. We actually were going to premiere in New York at an Israel festival called the Other Israel Film Festival. It was right before October 7th, and then everything got canceled. The PR agency for the film dropped us. They didn't want to deal with something of such a controversial nature. And it wasn't till April, that spring, that we premiered, and we were very warmly received. I think, obviously, everything is still fresh, and there still is a lot of things still happening, violence right now. But I was surprised at the reception being positive. I thought we were going to get a lot more backlash.
Yeah.
I was surprised to receive feedback from people in the diaspora as Jewish Israeli Americans or just Jewish Americans that would identify as very right-wing or pro-Israel or Zionist, telling me that this has been so healing for them, and it was a positive experience where I thought it would be more triggering for them. And same, I've had many Palestinians in the diaspora tell me that they feel so acknowledged and seen, and they're having a positive experience with the film. I'm sure we'll get backlash eventually, but I've been pleasantly surprised and that people are ready to hear and learn and to get this message. Right.
So from the West, let's go back here into this region and hear about what you're hearing from people here. I do have to say that you start the film with a disclaimer. You basically mentioned very, very straightforwardly, I would say, about how the views of the people that you're going to show in this film do not represent the communities from which they stem from. And you basically, you say that that's the starting point of the film. And I'm curious, while you're spending time filming and promoting the film here in Israel, have you encountered people that challenge the premise of the film of hope and coexistence? Did you hear the people that maybe are even opposing ending the war in Gaza, maybe people that even want to build settlements in Gaza right now? Did you come across those opinions, those people?
I think that because I was filming in this microcosm, I had less exposure to that. But obviously, when I was with the community at large in Israel in a social way or through, friends or family, they oftentimes would think this is naive. These people are foolish, and to me, I think they're missing the story here, and I really hope that the larger group can see this. But for the most part, the Israelis and Palestinians that are not in engagement, I wasn't really working on that in the film. So obviously, they're more kind of self-selecting to be in this like-minded space. When I was filming a lot with Combatants for Peace and Parent Circle, for example, the Joint Memorial Day, the counter-protests, so I was exposed to that. I heard that the cultural, the minister...
Yeah, right. That's breaking news. I wouldn't say breaking, but it's right now. I mean, the cultural minister, Miki Zohar, and also the support that he gets on the matter from the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, they're both threatening to cut the funds of the Cinematheque in Tel Aviv, where your film was screened just a couple days ago. And basically, you hearing that while having your film promoted through the Cinematheque, how does that feel, this whole involvement of the government of Israel?
I'm not surprised. I mean, that's been something that's been happening with a lot of what I've been filming and the subjects. It doesn't come as a surprise to me. So I thought there might be protests outside, and I was prepared for that.
Yeah. You don't seem very shaken by it at all.
I've gotten a lot of strength from the people in the film that are, they're doing this day in and day out. I don't feel it's as hard as what they have to go through, so.
Yeah. I mean, there's much to discuss, but we will have to wrap up soon. I do want to ask you maybe a couple of last questions. First of all, looking back on all the years that you worked filming and working, directing, maybe you can draw on one moment specifically that still goes with you, that you carry with you throughout all those years.
Sure. So one of the main subjects in the film, an activist, when I had just started to go to the West Bank, brought me to meet the Samaritans on the top of Mount Gerizim in Nablus. I actually just told this story last night. And this was when I just started to go and film there. And so I think that was the entry point for me, is meeting an ancient sect of ancient Jews that lived with a Palestinian nationality right above Nablus. And the Kohen there was speaking in Arabic to my film subject, who was then translating it to English for me to understand. And when he sang the Shema in modern Hebrew and then ancient Hebrew. It wasn't Aramaic, it was an ancient Hebrew that they use. It sounded even more similar to Arabic than modern Hebrew, and I think that's for me when things started to really shift and feeling this connectedness and this disruption to my own system, that my other was sitting and bringing me closer to my heritage, and that was really the beginning for me. So
it's very interesting. Okay, before we wrap up, the cliche question that I must ask, what do you hope people, viewers, take away with them from the film?
I guess my only hope, because I don't want to impose a belief or a view or an experience on someone. I made this was mine, and now it's for how the viewer wants to interpret and experience it. My hope would be that there's a crack in a belief or something new that they didn't expect to see, or just the humanity, piece that they can humanize. And this isn't just numbers or facts or information in the West that it sometimes gets boiled down to, is that.
The other, Joy Sela, thank you so much for speaking with me.
Thank you.
תודה גם לכם, צופות והצופים. תודה מיוחדת לשותפות ולשותפים שלנו. הערוץ הזה קיים רק בזכותכן ובזכותכם, ואתם, מקבלי ההחלטות, תחזירו את החטופות והחטופים הביתה עכשיו.